Hey everybody, welcome to our Mondays on Main Street, except today is Tuesday because of President's Day, and I'm here with Adam Dellemoncio from Movement Mortgage.
Thanks for having me, Rachel. So yeah, what we wanted to do today was just talk about some commonly asked questions for buyers and for sellers with a real focus on buyers today. So I guess we'll kick it off with the first question that every buyer would need to ask is, how do you get started if you do think you want to buy a home, whether it's today or 6 months from now?
So I get a lot of people that will message me on social media or give me a call and be like, hey, we're thinking about buying a house. I have no idea what I'm doing. How do I get started? And I always say that the pre-approval is the best way to go. It's kind of like your golden ticket for getting ready to buy a house, because if you don't know what you're pre-approved for, what your comfortable budget would be, you're really kind of throwing darts at a dartboard.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, that's the part of the conversation that we'll have is, what are you approved for, but also what does that monthly payment look like? How much cash do you need out of pocket? Things of that nature. So it's really good just to know before you even start looking at a house, fall in love with it, just to find out that it's not in a comfortable range for you. So well said.
The next question I have is, Adam, how much do you need to buy?
Yeah, so
How much cash?
It really depends. So it depends on if you're a first-time buyer or if you're a move-up buyer, if you're downsizing, how much the requirement's going to be. There's certain programs for first-time buyers. You can put down 0 to 5% is typically the down payment. So if you're looking at a $400,000 property, theoretically you could get in with 0% down, so nothing out of pocket. Closing costs are typically about 2% of the purchase price is a good rule of thumb. So again, depending on the purchase price, could be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 typically. Now, as far as upfront costs go, costs that you will have to pay regardless if you end up moving forward with the property or not, is inspection and appraisal. So those are two costs that, for the most part, unless you're waiving those, that you're going to have to endure no matter what. So that's about $1,000 for those two items as well. So I guess the short answer is it depends, but for first-time buyers, it can be really reasonable.
Yeah, and just going back to your point about the inspection and the appraisal, you said $1,000, but I think too, if you're looking in like a rural area, if you have to do a well inspection,
Right.
a septic inspection, those could cost more like $1,200. So
Yep.
$1,200 plus $1,000, probably $2,000 if you're looking in those rural areas that aren't connected to sewer or water.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's really well said, and that's why you're such a great agent. That leads into my next question. I guess it's a two-part question. Should you use a buyer's agent? Really, what's the difference? Why wouldn't you just go to the listing agent? And then how do you know if it's a good fit or if it's a good real?
That's a great question, Adam. I think it's really important for all buyers to get representation and to work with a buyer's agent. If they decide to work with a listing agent, they need to know that the listing agent is already a designated client representative for the seller, meaning they can only facilitate the transaction for you. They can't advise you on price. They can't do market comparisons for you. So if you really want the full package, especially if you're a first-time buyer or if you're somebody that has a house to sell and trying to upsize, you really want that person that's dedicated in your corner, acting as your client representative. So absolutely get with a buyer's agent.
And for the most part, there's no additional cost for a buyer's agent, so the seller's going to pay for
In most cases, the seller does compensate for the buyer's agent, but there are those cases where the seller isn't willing to, and we have to have that conversation with our
Right.
clients up front to let them know that they're not going to be compensated by the seller.
Right. No, that makes complete sense. And in a purchase of this magnitude, it's worth the cost, if there is a cost, to have that representation to make sure that you're covered. Right.
Absolutely. And then going back to your question about how to find somebody. So most agents that are successful, or somebody that is qualified, somebody that's organized, they're going to have their socials up and running. They're going to have their profiles, their client reviews, their sales history, the places that they service. Those will all be online. And worst case, ask somebody for a referral, or go online, look around, and call some agents and just ask to have a conversation, ask to meet with them, have a cup of coffee, interview a few people, and see who you drive with the most.
Absolutely. No, it's always funny whenever I'm engaging with an agent, and if I Google their email and I can't find any profile about them, I usually know that that's not a good
They may not
situation.
have very much experience.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, that's really well said.
Okay, next question for you, Adam. What happens if we have somebody that is working and then their spouse is not working? Does that mean they just can't buy a house?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. So all of New England is not a community property state, which means we don't have to count the liabilities of the spouse if they're not going to be on the mortgage. So a lot of times what I'll get asked is,
Okay, next question for you, Adam. What happens if we have somebody that is working and then their spouse is not working? Does that mean they just can't buy a house?
yeah, absolutely. Good question. So all of New England is not a community property state, which means we don't have to count the liabilities of the spouse if they're not going to be on the mortgage. So a lot of times what I'll get asked is more around, well, I have great credit, but my spouse doesn't have great credit. So how does that work? Should we apply together? Should we apply just with one person? What's the best way to do that? And the best way to set it up is to have both people apply together. So that way we can look at all three options. We can look at purchasing together, having one person purchase, or having the other person purchase. If you apply together, I can edit the application to see what's really best, to figure out if it's better with just one person or together. Maybe you can get more money together, but you're going to have a better rate and you're going to get into a better program with just one person due to having a better credit score. So just having a spouse that doesn't work, back to the original question, does not disqualify you by any means. We just have to take a look at the debt to income ratio to make sure that the payment can be supported by only one income source.
Great answer. So that's all we have today for the buyer frequently asked questions. If you had a question and you were able to submit one, please feel free to DM either Adam or I, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. And we will be back next Monday for Mondays on Main Street.